Hey there guys, today we are talking about Japanese beetles. A huge frustration in the garden and one of those pests that are fortunately really easy to kill. It just seems to riddle plants when they finally land on them. And so what I want to talk about is a few ways to kill them, treat them, and manage that situation. So a couple different chemicals we have will work really easily on them, but let's start with the life cycle. So Japanese beetles, most people notice them as an adult, and the adult is kind of a iridescent green beetle, fairly small, probably even smaller than a penny. They have little white dots down the back side of them. So you'll notice like 3 to 4 white dots on each side, kind of by their back legs, and kind of an iridescent green. Usually when you see Japanese beetles on your plant, you don't see one, you'll see like 30 or 40. One thing a lot of people like to do is set out Japanese beetle traps. So we sell those, but I highly discourage people from using them most of the time. So if you don't have Japanese beetles in your yard and you put out a Japanese beetle bag or trap, what you'll find is you will end up with a lot of Japanese beetles in your yard, because what is actually in there, there's a little pheromone packet, and the pheromone attracts the Japanese beetles. So if you don't have Japanese beetles in your yard, you really don't want to put that out, because now you're going to have Japanese beetles in your yard. And so I really highly discourage the bags or the traps unless you have an infestation in your yard. So if you got Japanese beetles on all your plants, your roses, your hibiscus and things like that, then sure, let's put out the trap. You're gonna get a ton more in there than even what's in your yard. But there's honestly a lot better ways to kill the Japanese beetles than using a trap. The trap is also, you have to actually empty the trap. So you're gonna have like hundreds in there. It's super nasty. They're all crawling around all over each other, having a little party in the bag, and they can't get out. And the only way to get them out is you physically removing them. I have a lot of customers that actually will put a bag out, and the next day that bag is already full. Every day they're having to empty that bag of beetles, and it's just super gross and nasty. Now, it does save you from applying chemicals to your landscape and in your yard, which some people really don't like to do. So if you want to be a little bit more pesticide free, it's a good way to go. But again, you really don't want to put the trap out unless you have an infestation in your yard. Now, the adults are going to come out in the late spring, so May going into June sometime is usually when we start seeing the adults fly around. At the point you see a few of the adults, usually those are some of the scouts, and what the scouts are doing is they're going out looking for a nice dinner for all their friends. And so they get to the plant, they release their pheromone, and then all the other Japanese beetles come and they have a little party. So usually you won't really notice them when there's just a couple out scouting, and then all of a sudden you'll notice like 30 or 40 on your plants. At the point that you notice that, what they're doing is they're feeding on your plants, they're mating, and then they're going down into the lawn and laying their larvae. What you'll see the larvae is like the little white grubs. Now, a lot of the little white grubs are also like a mass chafer or June bug, and those are also in the lawn. But Japanese beetles, the females will go down, they'll lay 40 to 60 eggs in their life. And those little grubs then are gonna feed on the roots of your lawn. They can do an immense amount of damage to your lawn, so it's also important in June to be applying a grub control to your lawn. That's gonna help kill those little babies that are starting to feed throughout the summer. So they're gonna go down, they're gonna lay their babies. The babies are gonna feed. In the fall then, those little grubs are gonna dive down into the soil, buried deeper to winter over. Once spring starts warming back up, the little grub will come back up closer to the surface. They'll feed on the roots a little bit, not near as aggressively as the babies in the summer when the female lays the eggs first, and those hatch, that's when the most damage is done. So early spring, they're gonna come back up, they're gonna feed minimal damage, and at that point, they're gonna start pupating into an adult. Then as the adult pupates, then that's when they're coming out, usually around the beginning to middle part of June sometime. It all depends on the weather and how fast things warm up. As those adults then pupate, they come out, they start feeding on your plants, the life cycle starts over. So it's usually really good to be putting down your grub control in June. That's gonna help kill any of the larvae, and then watching for adults throughout the summer. Now, the problem is you can spread your grub control and kill all the Japanese beetles grubs in your yard. However, your neighbor or 2, 3, 4 houses down or a mile away, people aren't using grub control, those adults are pupating and then they're flying into your yard. The adults are very mobile, so they're coming from all over to your yard because you have a beautiful landscape and a wonderful salad buffet there for them. And so the important thing to know is you can do all the right steps, but unfortunately some of your neighbors may not be putting grub control down, so you still may have adults show up in your yard. That doesn't mean your grub control didn't work. It did protect your lawn. So it's still good to put your grub control down so that way you're not dealing with a dead lawn from the grubs. Once you see the adults, then treating them as you see them. Handful of different sprays work really well. The good thing about Japanese beetles is they're extremely easy to kill. They're very obvious when you see them. Like I said, they're usually in clusters of 30 to 40 right there on the plant as they're mating and eating. So they're really easy to target. And they really have some plants that they really love. So there's certain plants that they are way more prone to be on than others. And so usually, you can really locate them, find them, see them all there, spray them down, watch them fall off the plant dead, and it's a great day. A couple easy ways to kill them. Triazicide is a great chemical. This is a hose end sprayer, so you hook it onto your hose, spray it out. This is also gonna kill a lot of other pests in the lawn and in the landscape. One thing before I go through all these sprays that we should talk about is time of day of application. If you're out spraying all your flower beds and your shrubbery in the middle of the day when all your pollinators are out, your bees, your bumblebees, your butterflies, that can be really harmful. You can kill some really beneficial bugs. So ideally we want to be spraying these things early in the morning or late in the evening. The other thing is when it's like it is today, 98 degrees outside, a lot of these chemicals, if you're applying them when it's that hot, will actually can cause damage to your plants because your plants are already under stress. You're throwing chemicals on them, and then those chemicals can actually sometimes burn the plant. And so it's important that we're spraying early or late to protect our pollinators, but also when it's super hot to protect the plants. So going back to the chemicals then, we've got things like triazicide, which is a hose end. You can spray it over your plants and just watch them fall off dead. Super easy way to apply if you've got a big area that you need to cover. If you've just got a few plants, you can use 8 or Rose Shield. Those both come in a ready to use, which is a little squirt bottle. So if you've just got a couple plants or patio pots that you need to treat, really easy way to go there. 8 is just an insecticide. That's just gonna kill the Japanese beetles. It also help with aphids and some of your other common pests. So that's a great chemical. Rose Shield, however, is a good product because it's a 3-in-1. So it's actually an insecticide, a miticide, and a fungicide. So it's called Rose Shield because it's great for roses. Japanese beetles love roses. So that's a great one to use on your rose bushes, but you can use it on a lot of other plants as well, understanding that it's also going to help with fungus and disease on your plants. Now, the other product that's similar to that is going to be your BioAdvance 3-in-1, which is an insect disease and mite control, and that's in the hose end form. And that's a really great product if you're dealing with mites as well as Japanese beetles and also wanting to protect them from disease and fungus, things like that. Now, the other thing with any chemical, the most important thing you can learn from this, read the label. You have got to read the label. There's certain plants you should not spray some of these on. Some of them can be applied on vegetables, some cannot. Some can be applied at certain temperatures and then not at other temperatures. You've got to read the label. Make sure you understand the product you're using and what the label says to make sure that we don't damage plants, pollinators, or potentially harm the food that we're growing in our gardens. So some of these are really great for the garden, some are not. So it's important to read the label, but understand Japanese beetles are really easy to kill when they're in that adult stage. You see them, you spray them down with any of these, you're just gonna watch them fall off, and it's a beautiful win for the day. So treat your grubs in June with a grub control for your lawn. That's gonna be really important. Watch for the adults as we start getting into June. Spray the adults as you see them. If you get a huge infestation, you want to put out a bag or a trap, that's fine, but understand you're gonna have to empty that regularly and continue to hang it back up. So that's all I got on Jap beetles. I hope you guys are successful in controlling them this year. We'll see you next time.